we dive into a full game preview of the Baltimore Ravens Week 15 matchup with the Cleveland Browns coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, follow along in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Here with us today, though, to preview another key divisional showdown, Baltimore taking on Cleveland in Week 15 as former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver. And of course, you can't forget the Super Bowl champion in there, Qadry Ismail. And Q, I know when you're talking about these division games, Ravens 3-0 in their division after that big Week 14 win against Pittsburgh. Now they go right up to Cleveland to take on Deshaun Watson in his first home start for the Browns.
Yeah, I tell you, the way the schedule is set up, this is really cool because you play those meaningful games late in the year in your division. It sets it up whether or not you feel you're a legit playoff team or just from a simple fact of competing against, each other. That's it makes for some entertaining and good watching football games as opposed to playing somebody perhaps out of conference and you're not as into the game.
Yeah, and they gave Baltimore a lot of these late season divisional matchups. You had the Pittsburgh game, then you go to Cleveland, then another Pittsburgh game just a couple weeks from now. Then you round it out in what I know you and I both think, Q, will be the big game in Week 18 going up to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. But we'll talk about this Cleveland game here first. And the obvious big storyline for Baltimore has been their quarterback situation. Will Lamar Jackson play? But it looks like it's setting up to be Tyler Huntley. Lamar Jackson was ruled out on Thursday after not practicing for all 3 days there. But Tyler Huntley, to John Harbaugh's understanding, he said during his press conference on Thursday that he is out of the protocol. So it is setting up for that Huntley start. Huntley talked to the media also, so that is obviously a very good sign for his availability. So for Tyler Huntley, Q, we've seen some action from him this year. Obviously, we saw him last year in a starter role too. He actually came into the game when Jackson got rolled up on in Cleveland last year, and that was obviously the start of Huntley's starts for Baltimore. But what do you want to see from him? Personally, for me, I want to see more deep shots down the field. Huntley hasn't necessarily been a great deep ball thrower over the course of his career so far. I think if you can open up the deep passing game with a couple of shots early, it can open up the entire offense, especially the run game, which has been so dominant for them.
Yeah, I tell you what, any defensive coordinator is going to look at the film and see what he can and cannot do. And if you and I know it, that means the coordinators and all the pundits and people who are paid to analyze and break down the film, they're going to know it as well. It puts a real big challenge, on your back, if you will, and put a big target saying, look, we don't know, or we don't believe, we don't think he can make those throws. Let's put him to the test and let's challenge him. And I think part of that challenge is obviously they got to stop the run. But if they get in third and long, or if they get in situations where they, a penalty or whatever is knocked this Ravens team out of, an obvious run situation, then I think, get up to the line and see whether or not, he has the ability to take a shot. Man-to-man opportunities are where you usually, see the deep ball, whether it be the deep post or the release off the line of scrimmage, 9 route, go route. Referencing back to that game last year in Cleveland, I mean, they did just that. They were like a lot of press man. And that, of course, obviously was the Rashad Bateman coming out story, if you will, with the way he played, just tremendous. But I think, that's going to be where this will be both for Tyler and for the receiving core to kind of, show that, look, you know what, we've seen and heard a ton of criticism from a lot of pundits. This is a chance to shut some people up and say, look, we are a force to be reckoned with.
Right, and I think this is a really good opportunity for them to try that. Cleveland has a middling pass defense this year. They're 18th in the league in net yards per attempt. But Q, I think it's a bigger opportunity for the running game because Cleveland's run defense has been atrocious this year. They ranked 28th in the or 26th, excuse me, in the NFL in yards per attempt given up on the ground. The defensive line, especially the defensive tackles, have been an issue for them all season. They've lost linebacker after linebacker. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the latest, and he's a very good player. He has been one of those players that the Ravens offense has struggled to figure out what to do with him and how to block him out of plays. He's now on injured reserve. The Browns are signing guys off the street at linebacker right now. Now, what we saw against Pittsburgh in week 14, Q, is I think what so many have been wanting to see for so long, which is that dominant ground performance, over 200 yards. And the Ravens didn't really pass the ball a ton in Pittsburgh. I mean, 17 pass attempts compared to those 42 rushing attempts. I think if you're the Ravens, you want to establish that ground game. And for a team in Pittsburgh that had a top 10 rush defense going into it, the best part of that game for me was the fact that everyone knew it was coming the entire game. The Ravens knew it, the Steelers knew it, the fans knew it, and the Steelers still could not stop it. So for me, going up against a Browns run defense that is worse than Pittsburgh's, I'm hoping for another really solid game on the ground.
Yeah, I can see it. Again, if one side of the ball is saying that, you know what, we're going to challenge you and, you know, get up and pressure your receivers and see whether or not you guys are going to take advantage of it. The other side of it is, all right, the Ravens are going to be looking at what are your weaknesses on the defensive side. And you know, if you can't hold up to what we feel is just a different variation of bully ball, we saw it, you know, on full display, you know, with the third string quarterback in the fourth quarter and putting teams away. And mother of pearl, what an amazing, 3rd and 6 was, or third and 3 and getting 6, I believe it was. I just think, you know, what Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Ronnie Stanley, my goodness, you know, you look at, you know, just the way in which the guard rotation, you know, Tristan Colon getting in there, Ben Cleveland getting in there. Yeah, this is a game where you put to the test your run offense versus their run defense, and they're gonna, you know, say, look, they're gonna dare us to stop them just as much as we on the outside. So basically, what's gonna happen is you're gonna get that 8th, 9th guy in the box. They're gonna man up on the outside and see who wins. That basically, see who blinks first. That's what's going to happen. This is going to be I think it's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, and the AFC North games always are. But Q, I'm going to tell you a sack discrepancy here. Cleveland's the gap between their number 1 sack leader and number 2. I'm sure you can guess who number 1 is for Cleveland, Mr. Myles Garrett himself, 12 sacks. The second leading sack person on their team is Taven Bryan, who has 2.5. It's almost 10 sacks in difference there. How worried are you for the Ravens offensive line going up against Myles Garrett? You have Ronnie Stanley, you have Morgan Moses, but I think it's going to be a battle between Stanley and Garrett the entire game.
Yeah, you know, I think this is good. This is, people aren't going to remember these names, but Tony Bracken versus Jonathan Ogden. And J.O., my teammate, went up against Jacksonville Jaguars defensive end and Tony Bracken and like, look, you just know it's worth the price of admission to see who would blink. Now, obviously, no one knows Tony. I'm sure some, you know, diehard Jacksonville fan, but everybody knows a Hall of Famer when they see it, and one of the best of all time in Jonathan Ogden. He performed extremely well. I think this is that style of a game where you have an athletic defensive end versus an athletic tackle. You know, you got a tackle that's extremely sound and knows his strengths and weaknesses, and oftentimes you are not going to see much of his weaknesses because he knows how to offset it with his strength. So this is a game where I think if there's a running game, if there's a passing attack, you know, look to the offensive line first, look to that defensive line, look to that setup, that matchup, and you'll see how the game is faring.
Right, and Garrett actually playing really well against the run this year, so he's not just making an impact as a pass rusher, he is also setting the edge and getting ball carriers down. So I think the ground game for a lot of Ravens games is always the key, but this one in particular, but it's not just the Ravens run offense, it's the Ravens run defense as well. Coming up in the second segment, we'll be diving in to this Ravens defense, how they can stop Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, and that Browns offense. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is sponsored by Tommy John. And don't make your loved ones face the dead of the winter in old t-shirts and ratty sweats, and help them fight the cold with cozy. Give the gift of Tommy John. And Tommy John, you're that much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. You can shop Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale right now and give the gift of comfort to everyone on your list, including yourself, with new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and even pajamas with over 18 million pairs sold. Giving Tommy John has become a holiday tradition. 97% of women and men love getting a gift from Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics, and Tommy John has so many good products that you can use. You have also the Celebrate Softness season with the gift of new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and pajamas. You should get Tommy John for everyone on your holiday list and for yourself too, because it makes you feel extremely warm and extremely comfortable. Every gift is backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantees. So hurry to Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale and get 30% off everything, plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. Order now so your gifts arrive before the holidays. 30% off plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/lockedon. TommyJohn.com/lockedon. See site for details. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. I kind of teased it heading in to our first break, but the run, just the word run, has been the Ravens' identity this year. You have the run game on offense, which has been great. They're the second best rush offense in the league. But their run defense, they're the third best run defense in the league right now. And you can give a lot of credit to a lot of people when you're talking about that. Calais Campbell and Justin Madubuike and Broderick Washington. You go to the second level with guys like Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, guys setting the edge really well also. But I think going up now against a Cleveland team, we all know who Nick Chubb is. We all know that he's one of the best running backs in this league right now. You have Kareem Hunt over there as kind of your 1-2 punch. Cleveland's run game has faltered in recent weeks, but they still have the 9th best run offense in the NFL. Do you think the top key in this one, Q, is being able to stop the Browns' run offense and make them a bit more one-dimensional and force Deshaun Watson to beat them?
Yeah, I think part of their run offense is just the fact that they've been so extremely productive early in the season. And now you have Deshaun Watson back. Now, the crazy thing about it, they do that RPO really, really well. And you can't just hone in now on the running attack because of the fact that you get a little nosy and you push up to that line and you're thinking you're going to stop the run. Deshaun Watson is really deft at really getting the ball out to his guys too. So against the Cincinnati Bengals, I thought the Bengals secondary really did their job extremely well. Amari Cooper had his struggles on the outside, and so it gave them an opportunity to stuff the run. Now, you mentioned all those names as far as the Ravens' defensive personnel, and their personnel is stout, no question about it. But that guy, that man, Uncle Roquan Smith, he's the one I think that has really led the charge and given this defense an identity in regards to stopping a run, in regards to being so stout and not allowing these big play runs, these methodical drives to kind of continue to go forth. So, yeah, this is a really intriguing matchup for me to kind of see. Obviously, the Ravens, when they first had the matchup, it was a strong and solid one, and they held up. There was some big runs, though. I think now that you got Roquan, this is going to be really interesting and a lot of fun to see.
Right. The Browns averaged 4.7 yards per carry in that first matchup. Nick Chubb had 5.7, and then Jacoby Brissett had 6. Kareem Hunt wasn't really a factor. It was really Nick Chubb, and that was it. He has 16 carries. The next closest was Kareem Hunt with 5. So they might try to incorporate Chubb and Hunt a bit more together, but Hunt hasn't really had a big year for them. He's kind of been left, and it's been the Nick Chubb show. But Deshaun Watson, I know, is the key storyline on Cleveland's offense. Q, this will be his first home start. He's been trying to figure it out over these last couple of weeks. Has not looked particularly sharp. He hasn't played football, or before he hasn't played football in over 2 years. So he's still getting back into the swing of things. Now, this Ravens secondary, I think, has really stepped up in recent weeks. Marlon Humphrey, who did not have his best game. In fact, it was probably his worst game of the year against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 14. You're hoping for a bounce back there. You still have Marcus Peters, who has had his fair share of struggles this year as well. But then you have the return of Marcus Williams, I think was absolutely massive for this defense. Kyle Hamilton, you can play him in so many different areas. Chuck Clark is solid overall, I would say. So going up against Deshaun Watson, Q, what do you expect from this Ravens secondary?
Well, first of all, you see me with this little pink thing, and basically it's a muscle releasing fascial tool that I'm using to do some trigger points on my scalp, which help release a lot of the tension through my neck, which then, of course, travels down and allows me to have the ability to move my spine in a smooth and fluid way. Why am I saying that? Because when it comes to Marcus Peters and when it comes to Marlon Humphreys, both guys need to go ahead and release some of that tension and some of that locked tissue, especially when it comes to Marcus Peters and obviously him rehabbing his knee. I know that Marlon Humphreys, was kidding about, sort of the Liver King and, reaching out to him for some advice. I'm like, bruh, you should have reached out to me because I'd have told you to take the capsule. The capsule is, and there's a lot of companies out there, don't necessarily need to name them on our show, but unless they want to come on and do some advertising, now there's a little different. But with that said, I think when you look at just the body and the way in which they've had to go through it, this is a battle of attrition every year, and you're trying to hold on for dear life. I think because of the fact that Marcus Peters is coming off of a knee injury, you start off strong and all that, but then the body is like, whoo, I'm still recovering. You got to give me a chance, And I think, the Ravens staff, the medical staff, they've, done a better job of being, on top of things, but you could see where, Marcus Peters has had his struggles. I think as the season/off season comes, however far the Ravens make it, hopefully all the way to the big dance. But my point is that he's going to get better. Now, back to the Liver King / Marlon Humphrey. I just think it's, part concentration, part technique, part, and I've said this before, it's like sometimes it seems to me that he get, kind of bored with it. Like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, you're not going to, oh, shoot, you threw it to me. And, against some upper tier guys, or if he's in the slot, he plays extremely well. And I think he kind of locks in and recognizing, in the slot, there's a two-way go that, receivers can take advantage of, and little details along those lines has him really just being a fine slot corner. But he is needed on that outside. Their depth is just okay. He's a difference maker for no other reason than just his talent, and who he is tremendous. They need to both play well. They need to make it be a one-dimensional game where now, yes, again, Roquan and company can go up against Njoku, who is, certainly that dude is good. If Amari had a drop-off game, Njoku definitely stepped up and he played really well. So all hands are on deck when it comes to the passing attack and what Deshaun Watson can do. Because if they can stuff the run, you are going to see them open it up, and that's what they pay him all that guaranteed money for.
You mentioned David Njoku, and I know the Ravens, it has been a struggle over the course of the last couple of years for them to cover tight ends, even cover running backs out of the backfield. What are you throwing at David Njoku to eliminate him from the Browns' game plan and maybe force them to go somewhere else to maybe Amari Cooper or to maybe a Donovan Peoples-Jones?
Well, part of it is just disrupting his release off the line of scrimmage. JPP and Tyus Bowser and all the boys. Adafe Owe. I know Adafe, I think in the Pittsburgh game, who was it? Was it Johnson or Pickens? One of the two guys. He was, pulled out of the rush look and kind of got in space. And in that, you're hoping that because he's so fast and athletic, he'd be able to cover. He didn't quite get there, missed the tackle, and the guy got upfield for a critical first down. But yeah, I just think that Adafe needs to play, and if he is called upon, not give up that type play and corral him down if it is Njoku. But the other guys, if he's to their side, yeah, you better disrupt them. Don't give them a free release off the line of scrimmage.
And speaking of the outside linebacker position, last question before we head into our break queue. The David Ojabo question has been one that has been asked by many people over the last, ever since he was drafted. But now that we've kind of gotten the tease of David Ojabo, we haven't seen him back active. It's the same thing with Charlie Kolar. Do you think we'll see either of those guys this season, or do you think that they just feel confident enough with their veteran depth at those positions to maybe not necessarily activate them and rush them into anything? Because the depth of both outside linebacker and tight end, those are two of the deepest positions on the roster right now.
Yeah, I don't see why you need to rush them back. I don't see, what's the advantage to having, Charlie Kolar out there. And, I think for what we know, what Ajabo is, he's going to play at some point, but this is late in the season, and that how much can a rookie truly help you, especially when you do have other young players and other even veterans that are just balling. So I think it's a slippery slope. But at the same time, yeah, maybe the Falcons game. I'm not saying to take the Falcons by no stretch of imagination. Don't get it twisted. That they're just going to be an easy win. I think this is it'd be a good. If I had a chance, I'd love to throw them out there for the Falcons game. It's a home game. Give them a chance to kind of get their feet wet, and then make an evaluation on whether or not you want to put them in for any future games.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening with both of those guys. But at tight end and outside linebacker, Baltimore certainly does have a lot of depth and a lot of talent, not just Ojabo and Kolar, but a bunch of other guys. You mentioned both young guys and veterans alike. But coming up, we'll be diving into a bit about what happened in Week 14 against the Steelers, as well as our final score predictions and final thoughts for this Week 15 Cleveland matchup. So be sure to stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Still a ton to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is sponsored by Total Wine and More. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine and More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay or the perfect gifts for everyone on your wish list with some help from a friendly guide, and all with the confidence of knowing that you found something special for the lowest price. Love what you find only at Total Wine and More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Drink responsibly. Be 21. We're back, rounding out Locked On Ravens on Purple Friday. Kevin Oestreicher here with Qadry Ismail as Baltimore looks for their third straight victory and to go 4-0 in their division so far this year. But Q, let's talk about the game where they went 3-0 against Pittsburgh in Week 14. This was just a wild, wacky game all around where the Ravens forced 3 turnovers. You got interceptions by Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen and Marcus Williams. The offense, again, as we talked about earlier, this was a game where they ran the ball 42 times compared to just 17 pass attempts. J.K. Dobbins looking like J.K. Dobbins. You have Gus Edwards out there as well, but then Tyler Huntley leaves with a concussion. So Anthony Brown comes in and leads this team to a victory by playing mistake-free, completing a couple of big third down passes, just a couple passes in general. What were your overall takeaways from what you saw in Week 14?
I just saw a game where the determination of this Ravens ball club, offensively and defensively, was on full display. The guys that were out there, your A-listers, they showed up. Ronnie Stanley, that dude showed up. Kevin Zeitler wasn't there. Okay, Tristan Colon, we're going to rotate you in there with Ben Cleveland. I think the bigger picture is the fact that, for Ben Cleveland, man, John Harbaugh even admitted it. Ty goes to the runner when it comes to, from a baseball aspect of thing. Well, apparently the simultaneous fumble that Drake had, like literally it apparently from the video, Ben Cleveland had it, period, end of discussion, and he overall played a great game. We talk about just the two-headed monster, and John, made a statement that I thought was really poignant. He's like, yeah, we trust all our backs, but yeah, we built this offense around these two. So it's good to have them back. And they had their devastating, knee injuries and all that from last year. And obviously JK doing a risky thing by having another surgery in season that clearly has helped him. I think on the, flip side of it all, the defense, you talk about Marcus Williams, mother of pearl, the obscure rule of catching the ball in the field of play and your momentum takes you into the end zone, it should be kind of treated like a punt. And it is unfair, to make a big play and then kind of, get the -1 yard line. But, to set up your team the way you were setting up your team, Patrick Queen, using his veteran savvy to make his interception. Obviously, Roquan Smith getting to Kenny Pickett. And I don't wish anybody any harm as far as concussions, but man, that was a strong, solid tackle by him. I don't know. I just thought offensively, defensively, and special teams player of the week in Calais Campbell. How critical was that? You just credit the audible that was called to put him over the A gap and make a block, make a key timely block. All those things just had to come together, but you saw the determination of the team, and you saw Anthony Brown in the most critical of moments. Renegade was playing. The terrible towel was going. And you're at the -1 yard line. Are you kidding me? And you throw a ball deep in your own end zone. It was a strong 5-yard catch, and then it started to get them out of that harm's way. But it helped lead them to a decisive, solid, typical Ravens Steelers football game, and the Ravens got the better edge.
I was going to ask you about Marcus Williams and Calais Campbell, but you answered both those questions for me. So again, same wavelength, you and I. But I want to ask you about Justin Tucker. He passed Matt Stover. He's now the new Ravens all-time leading scorer. I mean,
Kudos.
To me, Q, there's not a guy that deserves it any more than Justin Tucker does. He has earned this, and for what he's done for this Baltimore organization, I do just want to kind of take a step back and just appreciate Justin Tucker, who is now the Ravens all-time scoring leader.
Goat of goats. Matt Stover even acknowledged that, this guy is his career, his path is Hall of Fame worthy. He has changed the way you look at kicking. And again, I remember obviously playing with Matt Money Stover. Money Matt was really technical and very methodical in his approach, and a young rookie had to embrace that methodical approach to changing his style of kicking to a straight ball style. And Jerry Rossberg was like, look, you change this, you're going to make the team. You make kicks, and you're going to be kicking a long time here in Baltimore. You're going to kick a long time in Pittsburgh, a long time in Cleveland, and a hell of a long time in Cincinnati, because the AFC North, the way in which there ain't no dome, there ain't no kind of perfect, down south kind of weather pattern or whatever. Nah, you in the AFC North, November, December, and January, and you delivering. And for him to do that, the way he's been able to do it so incredibly consistent, speaks volumes to the level of talent and just masterful work of working his craft of Justin Tucker.
Yeah, he's been incredible this year, for his entire career. There is nothing short of spectacular when you're talking about Justin Tucker. I'm sure he'll have another good game in Cleveland, but hopefully they won't need him to kick those field goals in the red zone. Hopefully Baltimore can punch the ball in the end zone, and he'll be kicking extra points. So let's get to final scores here, Q. This is a game that I originally actually had as a loss for Baltimore before the year. I'll spoil it a little bit, and I'll say I flipped it to a win. I just think with the way that the Ravens are running the ball on the ground, with the way that Cleveland is struggling to defend the run, their linebackers right now, I think the Baltimore can pull off winner. And I think it's very important for them to do so also, to get to 4-0. And Cincinnati, they are hot right now. You have to be able to keep your lead and have that tiebreaker over them and set up for that Week 18 showdown.
Play your best football. If you want to make the playoffs, you got to step up to the plate. And again, Cleveland is going to test you, going to challenge you, going to test your mettle mentally as far as your run fits and all the things. They're going to test your eyes with Deshaun Watson and whether or not the RPO game is going to be hitting. Offensively, yeah, they struggled against the run, but at the same time, you're going to have to throw the ball. Are you going to be ready to throw the ball? Are you ready going to go out there and achieve what you feel you can achieve? So there's a lot that is at stake, and there's a lot there as far as both teams in their matchups. I'm curious if I give a score. I used to be Mr. Oh, the Ravens goes to score over 30. So maybe I can do the Jedi mind trick. I'm going to say this game is going to be a tight one again. They've had tight games. They're going to get out to an early lead. I say it's 21-17 Baltimore.
All right. And hey, the reverse jinxes have worked for Q before. So hopefully this will be a 40, like the game a couple years ago, maybe it's 47-42 like we had then, but I have that Ravens win too. I go 27-21. And I know that hopefully this can be a game where if Baltimore, with the way their red zone offense has been, they've been going like 1 of 3 and 2 of 4. If they can up their percentage in the red zone to 66% or 75%, or even get it up to 100, that would be the goal. But if you're able to get it up there, then Baltimore is easily scoring 30, maybe even you're looking at 40 points. Now with Tyler Huntley, obviously he is not Lamar Jackson. You do have to take that into account, but I think Huntley is more than capable of leading this team to a win. So my final score, I'm going 27-21 Baltimore for week 15. But Q, I appreciate you. That's all I have for you here today. And 4-0 in the division, it sounds pretty sweet right now, considering what Baltimore has left on their schedule. 2 of their last 3 games after Cleveland, their divisional ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is get to this win and then go ahead and look down the road. I think for you and I, all we look at is, and we're circling that week 18 matchup. That's what it comes down to. Take care of business now, then you can worry about those later.
Yep. In order to get to that week 18 matchup and have it mean so much, you first got to win the games before week 18 to get your record there. And if Cincinnati keeps playing the way they are, we're setting up for a good one in week 18. But it first comes down to Cleveland going up there and facing off against Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, and that Browns team in week 15 for Baltimore. But that's all I have for you here today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Ravens. Again, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow along with us in audio form. Greatly appreciate all the support. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into what happened in that Cleveland and Baltimore game. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I will see you right back here on Monday.